I'm Maggie Fernald. I'm a history and theater double major, and this is one of my first Civil War studies classes that I've taken, but I really do like it. I worked at Mount Vernon last summer, or this past summer, so the summer 2024. So I got super interested in like museum kind of stuff. And then this past summer, I worked at special collections at the college, so got a little more hands-on with artifacts. So this was really cool to me to be able to come in here. These are the death hooks. So they're hooks that workers would have used to lift the remains of Union soldiers from the battlefield, because bodies get very bloated and disgusting, and you don't want to grab someone's limb because it will come off. So using the hooks was a way to get up underneath about the armpit or so and pull someone out and put them into, let's say, a large pit or a coffin or something like that without touching them. Well, a lot of people would say gruesome, but I would say interesting. I'm super into like funerals and funeral history. I'm actually writing my capstone paper on the history of embalming and how Civil War affected embalming and made it more mainstream, specifically starting with Lincoln's death. And so this whole case really drew me, but these hooks were so interesting because there's like no information on them. I feel like these hooks kind of bring forth the idea of how just like brutal and arcane the Civil War was, to the point where we're getting so many bodies that we need to pull them up with hooks. It wasn't just like clean cut, and it kind of took the rules of civility and like the typical Victorian funeral and like threw them out the door. They're all 3/8 of an inch thick, roughly about 34 inches long. And that suggests that they may have been cut down from raw iron rods and shaped into hooks for the specific reason of pulling up bodies. But beyond that, we don't really know that much. And a lot of my research has pointed towards a lot of these being made of bent bayonet hooks, but that is obviously not what these are. So the provenance is a little wishy-washy, but one of the things that like it leans towards of the Civil War as a whole is like just kind of the mass casualties, to the point where like historians are still debating how many people died, and whether you count people who died afterwards because of like illnesses that they received, or just like straight up getting shot, and just like the bloodiest, war in American history. It's specifically with the bayonet version of this, the juxtaposition of the killing machine, the gun, and the after-death aid, the hook, because specifically they would use the fact that the gun was super long and had a hook on the end to pull bodies up from these giant pits. So I found that super interesting that like the killing machine and the death reclaimer are one and the same. It shows how far we've come in burying our dead, in the fact that we still have gruesome and bloody wars, but we're actually starting to reclaim our dead and treat them with more civility, and it shows the advancement in how we treat bodies. Well, aside from coming here, there was a lot of different places that I found different research on specifically the bayonet versions of these. There's lots of books that touch on this kind of stuff. There's nothing that I saw that was like specifically death hook focused, but if you look at a lot of like Civil War death writing, it kind of touches on how these mass graves were created. I think it really has a good place here, like speaking to the other death documents and kind of taking you through the idea of like the soldier's death and like the blanket and what he might have had on him, the diary, what his last words might have been. It kind of paints, like this whole case kind of paints a full picture of a Civil War soldier's last moments.